All right. Good morning, folks. Good morning. It is Monday morning here. It's March 20th, 2023, 8:36 here on the East Coast. And what is it? One more day away from spring, and it's winter. It's freezing here still. So thank you, Mr. Groundhog. Welcome to today's show. And today we're going to talk about letting it go and forgiveness, particularly on the forgiveness of self. There's two sides to that coin, and I want to focus on forgiving oneself before we move forward and forgiving others. So, thank you for joining us and listening in. I know that I might ramble on sometimes, but it's just the thoughts that are in my head that kind of come out all at once. But I did record this podcast last week and talked for about 45 minutes. And when I went back to the studio to, edit some of the stuff and throw in some background music and whatever, there was no audio. So I don't think the message was right for the time, and I just had to let that one go. So that was 45 minutes of me rambling on, and none of it was captured. And so it was a good pep talk to myself, I guess. And, honestly, I don't think it was time for it, because I think I was still in the process of letting things go. Because I'm in the midst of a life transition, a couple different type of life transitions. And, when you got to do something and you don't do it, what's the point? And if I'm talking about doing it and I'm not doing it, what's the point? So, yeah, that was funny. Oh, also, I've checked my perimeter. There are no 8-legged creatures that I'm aware of at the moment in time. So I think we're safe. Let's continue on with the show, shall we? All right, so let it go. I'm gonna reference this book here by Teresa Chung. I'm sorry if I butchered the name. With the 21 rituals to change your life. Now listen, this isn't like an end-all be-all thing. This is just practical stuff to kind of implement in your life and just see what your personal experience is with it. So, but she's got some good stuff in this chapter, and ritual number 10, as she calls it, is titled Let It Go. And she quotes Dan Brown: sooner or later, we've all got to let go of the past. And here's the other thing. So I tried to plan out the podcast and talking about what topics that I wanted to go over. So when I tried to write it down, here's notes from when I was doing my second attempt on this thing. And I went down a rabbit hole. I was like, who is Dan Brown? And where did he quote this from? Well, it's from Dan Brown's the guy that wrote the Da Vinci Code and all that stuff. And it's from one of his books, Deception something. And it's a character in the book that just makes this comment. So I totally got distracted with that and was on the rabbit trail. Anyways, Teresa opens up with this chapter saying, sorry isn't the hardest word for many of us. Goodbye is. Many of us find it extremely hard to let go, and we cling on to negative feelings that are preventing us from growing and moving forward with our lives. So ritual number 10 is all about releasing. Letting go of negative emotions or experiences or things or people who simply don't fit into your life anymore is essential for changing your life for the better. And releasing is the key to personal growth, but it doesn't come naturally to most of us. And she talks about practicing for the next 21 days if we want to attract success and happiness to our lives. So, yeah, letting things go. Negative emotions, experiences, things, people, whatever the case may be, is definitely, I think we're so, it just kind of goes back. We're so scared of change because we are creatures of habit that we cling to both good and bad things. But when we know that we need to change, or that change is happening to us, whether we want it to or not, we clinch onto things. And it could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be a past experience that you almost utilize to orchestrate your worldview on why you are the way you are, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, there's tons of examples of this, and we clinch onto it in hopes that I don't even, maybe that it saves us, maybe that it brings us through, or whatever. But you just, if you let things go, like you literally let things go, that releasing, that act of releasing is freeing. It's, and I think a lot of people, also hold on because they feel like maybe they're giving up, or they're quitting, or whatever the case may be. And I'll be one of the few that says it, because I'm a pretty stubborn person and determined in my ways. Sometimes you just have to quit. You have to. And, it doesn't make it right, wrong, or whatever you want to label it as. You have to quit in order to change. You have to quit some things in order to change. You have to quit relationships, quit habits, quit maybe a career for change, especially if you're trying to improve the quality of your life. Yeah. If you realize that your quality of life is diminishing, whether it be your mental health or physical health, or a combination of there, and you have to make a decision to change. And it's hard to change. Nobody likes change. It's unfamiliar. It's difficult. And I listened to a great podcast yesterday, and this isn't like a shout or anything, but I listened to Nick Bare's podcast with Lewis Howes, and that was amazing. And it kind of concreted some ideas that I had going on during a particular period of time in my life. And what I think, it's all about perspective sometimes, and it comes back to that mindset of like, how do we think, and capturing those thoughts and trying to see it for what it is. And part of that podcast talked about they talked about an author, and I would have to go back and listen to it so I can figure out who they were talking about in the book that he wrote. But people talk about going through a life crisis, and you name it: divorce, job loss, death of a child, whatever, it could be that you would label as a crisis. And what they did was shift that perspective. This author that they were talking about said that it's not necessarily a life crisis, it's a transition in life. You're transitioning from one thing in your life to the next. And you look at it, if you graduate college, you're transitioning from a college student into the workforce. And that can be, for some people, crippling. And I was like, oh God, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Especially if they can't find a job or whatever the case may be. So they talked about it not being a crisis in your life, but it's a transition. And during that transition, if you're prepped for that transition, it can be, as Nick Bear said, he was transitioning from the military into his supplement career and fitness career. It was pretty seamless for him because he had already was building that upon his military career. But if you're not prepped for it, it could be pretty frantic. And I think the best case scenario there is being still, holding tight, because sometimes it's like, oh, I got to do something. We got to be busy. I got to do this. I got to do that. Take a minute, pause, reflect on things, and just be still. And that is very hard to do, because I'm in the middle of doing that right now. So, let's talk about why it's important to let things go, the benefits of it, and, maybe some of the roadblocks that we'll have. And Teresa even gives some practical stuff here, and I've practiced some of it in my own personal life. So she quotes Deepak Chopra. I might have butchered that. I don't even know who that is, and I'm not going to take the time to find out who, because God knows 3 days later I'll be sitting here trying to figure out who this is and all the things that they've done in their life. But she quotes them, and they say, in the process of letting go, you will lose many things from the past, but you will find yourself. Sorry, there's a kitty cat out there walking outside. I get distracted. I'm sorry. Gotta get that coffee. All right. Research suggests that negative emotions like fear, anger, and guilt release chemicals into your body that can weaken immunity and cause major illnesses, fatigue, and poor health in general. Holding on to negative emotions can also seriously damage your psychological health and trigger depression. If you hold on to negative emotions, they tend to dominate your perception of everything and everyone, and so sabotage your chances of success and happiness as a result. Releasing those emotions will also stop you worrying so much about what other people think, because once you let go of what is dragging you down, you rediscover your true self. And then the rest tends to sort itself out. In addition, releasing will encourage you to stop seeing yourself as a victim, because when you see yourself in this way, you are helpless to create the positive changes you need to transform your life. Accepting responsibility of your feelings, letting go, and moving on is empowering because it puts you in control. Now look, letting go is not the same as ignoring or suppressing. In fact, it is quite the opposite. You must acknowledge negative feelings before letting go. Focusing exclusively on the positive while neglecting to give due attention to the negative emotions that have accumulated over the years is a recipe for disaster, because in order to find a sense of meaning and personal growth in life, you need to deal with both joy and pain. Bad feelings can also act as a warning sign, alerting us to areas of our lives that aren't working, so they must be acknowledged. So while it is impossible to avoid negative feelings, after all, life is about experiencing setbacks and conflicts. The key is learning how to deal with them. Suppressing them or carrying them around with you will damage your health and psychological well-being. Acknowledging them, learning from them, and then releasing them will increase your chances of health and happiness. That's a lot. But there's a lot of good stuff in that. And I like how things are connected. Things are connected. She talks about once you let go of what is dragging you down, you rediscover your true self. And we talked about it with Living Fearless, with Jamie Winship's book of your true identity versus what you think is your real identity and your false identity. It's just not good to hold on to these things. There's no real benefit to clinging to something that basically will impact your life in various negative ways. And I guess the question we would have to ask ourselves, why are we holding on to this? And maybe once we get an answer for that, then we can release it. And if we don't get an answer, maybe that's even more all the reason to let it go. You cling on to something and you ask that question. It's like, I really don't know. So let it go. Let it go. Yeah. You hold on to this stuff, and you're not gonna change. And she said all the stuff that I was talking about. And on the flip side, she's not saying that you're ignoring or suppressing these things that have happened in your life or the feelings that you're feeling in your life. In fact, you're confronting them. A lot of the times we're afraid to let go because we're afraid to face things. And that fear of facing whatever you're holding on to is more paralyzing and detrimental than actually dealing with it. It is scary because sometimes maybe you don't want to feel those emotions, or maybe you're not even ready to feel them or face whatever experiences that impacted you on a negative side of things. But she says life is all about experiencing setbacks and conflicts. And I think if you parallel that to the worldview of Christianity, suffering is used a lot to draw people near to God. And that setbacks and conflicts falls right into that. And it's the key. She says, after all, life is about experiencing setbacks and conflicts. The key is learning how to deal with them. And if you parallel that with the worldview of Christianity, suffering is you learn how to deal with suffering. What is the purpose of this? And if you suppress that and you carry it around with you, you're just damaging yourself. So it's in your best interest. The benefits far outweigh the fear of letting things go. So she has a personal experience that she shares here, and I'm not going to go into that, but she quotes Joseph Campbell here. We must be willing to let go of the life we have planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. Now, that's a interesting quote, because sometimes we plan out our life so much and then it doesn't go according to plan. That can be paralyzing as well. And it's like, well, I was supposed to do this, this, and this, and everything was lined up and everything was going, and then it totally got railroaded for whatever reason. There is a reason for it. Be still, listen, and figure out why that happened, and then let it go. Because there's something else on the other side of that. Good stuff. So, roadblocks. She talks about roadblocks here. And Jessica Hatchigan. I don't know who that is. We can look it up later in our own free time. She quotes, "There is an important difference between giving up and letting go." This was interesting because I said earlier that sometimes you have to quit. So let's see what this talks about. Most people are scared to admit they have inner pain because they think the process of letting go will open old wounds again and they will relive the pain. This isn't the case at all, because you are not revisiting your inner pain. You are releasing it and letting it go. The process is completely natural and far less painful than the inner pain. Compare it to being shot by an arrow in the chest. The arrow could stay lodged in your chest and you may be able to survive, but in time, the wound will fester and turn poisonous and threaten your life. However, if the arrow is gently and painlessly removed, you are free of it and ready to heal and live a normal and healthy life again. So I might not necessarily agree with some of that, and that's okay. You know, you will have to, especially if, in my opinion, if you're holding on to things, maybe you haven't faced it yet. And you do have to face it. Maybe you will have to open old wounds. And that's part of the process, though. And I don't know if there's a way to gently and painlessly remove an arrow once you've been shot in the chest. I don't think that was a very good example. But you definitely don't want to let the arrow sit there. You do want to get that removed. And it might hurt getting it removed, but once it's removed, it can heal. Same thing with letting things go. It's hurting you if you hold on to it, and then soon it might be extremely painful facing it and letting it go. But man, the healing can start after that. Others may be scared of letting go of old wounds because they have become comfortable with using them as an excuse not to be happier or more successful. If that's the case, the letting go ritual in this chapter is absolutely crucial if you want to change your life for the better. A backward-looking victim mindset is a barrier to success and happiness in every area of your life. That's fundamental right there. And even in that podcast that I listened to yesterday, they talked about not necessarily this. Lewis Howes has released a book called The Greatest Mindset, I believe. And that's what they were talking about on Nick Bear's podcast. So Lewis was talking about people will get stuck in either the good or bad, and they won't change anything because they're comfortable. They're comfortable with the good, or they're comfortable with the bad because they're familiar with it. And instead of changing things to achieve something greater or better for them, they'll stay where they are because we're creatures of habit and we like comfort. And, you know, if we challenge stuff, it kind of puts us on edge. But that's That's how we've survived for so long, is we get challenged and we figure things out. We face problems and we create solutions and we overcome stuff. When you stay somewhere where you're comfortable, and whether it be good or bad, I mean, it's on both sides here, you get stagnant. And you know what happens in stagnant water? Mosquitoes. They're not really good for anything that I know of. So I don't want to be stagnant. I want to change for the better. Because what happened, and people might look at that as being selfish, but if I'm changing my life for the better and I'm putting myself in a better spot mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, that will outwardly reflect and impact those around me. So if we're choosing to be better individually, collectively, it's going to change everything around us. The choice is yours, literally. It says here, the choice is yours. You can choose to move in the direction of your dreams, or you can choose to live a life of excuses where dreams do not come true. Here's another roadblock. Surprisingly, another roadblock for this ritual is not thinking you have anything to let go of. Perhaps you don't have painful memories from the past or feelings that drag you down. If that is the case, letting go is still important, because life is always about moving forward. You need to let go of stages in your life or people or situations that aren't quite a fit for you anymore. There's always something we need to let go of, whether we realize it or not, even if that letting go is simply saying goodbye with love and blessings to what happened yesterday. Yeah. There's always something. It doesn't have to be like a dramatic past event or anything like that. It could be somebody cutting you off, in traffic and giving you the bird, or, maybe somebody spilled coffee on you and ruined your newly pressed shirt that you were going to work in, or you got rear-ended, or you name it. Something that just like festers in you and then snowballs into this negative worldview of an emotion where it's just like curse the world and everyone in it. We gotta just get rid of that. So, practical ways of letting go. And you think like, how do you let things go? What do you do? So the purpose of this book is to create like a personal experience and basically a ritual or routine that you can implement to bring this more, I guess, to life. And some of the things that she mentions in here, might sound whatever to you, cliche, whatever. Everybody has their own way of dealing with things, and she gives a number of things. And I'll tell you the one that I use and like, because it's very powerful. So, practice how to let go. As mentioned above, it is important to find your own way to let go of emotions, situations, people, or beliefs that no longer resonate with you or are holding you back. Letting go is an ongoing process for each one of us, even if we are not consciously aware of it, because if we think about it each day of our lives to fully embrace the opportunities today presents, we must let go of yesterday. So here are some suggestions to help that process. There isn't a separate section this time on how to ritualize this process, because letting go is always deeply meaningful and therefore by definition a ritual. First of all, recall an emotional experience or situation that is causing you discomfort or sorrow or regret. Visualize it in your mind, and then as you perform the ritual of your choice, formally let go of that painful experience or feeling. If you don't have anything that you feel needs releasing, Simply focus on what went on in your life yesterday and releasing that to the past. And then she goes through some suggestions. So say you can't visualize anything or have a hard time visualizing. Writing things out is also a great way to kind of pull that thing out of you, that negative experience or negative emotion. So some of the things she says, one of the things is Gone with the Wind. Because this one is done outdoors. You pick something light, like a feather or a blade of grass or a leaf, and you blow it and watch it float away. Personally, I don't do that one. It's just not how I kind of connect with it. Another one is Cut the Cord, where you have a balloon, and you watch that thing go away. Or releasing a sky lantern when night falls can be effective and perhaps even more beautiful. That's probably more good. Releasing a sky lantern, she says this is beautiful and inspiring ritual that helped her cope following the loss of her mother. And that was kind of the personal experience she talked about with letting things go. Float away, you drop flowers in the river and watch them float away, or you create a space and where you clear away clutter or tidy a space, and you can think of it also as a way of letting go of old to make way for the new. Blessings. If it is time to say goodbye to someone you have studied with, lived with, worked with, or had an important relationship with, one of the most powerful ways to let go is to simply say goodbye with your blessing. And yeah. It's not good to end on a bad note. Face it, fix it, or make it right, and let it go. It's definitely more fulfilling to end on a good note. The one that she mentions that I use is Ashes to Ashes. If you have time and the opportunity, writing down what you want to let go of on a piece of paper and then lighting a match and safely watching it burn can be a very powerful releasing ritual. And I love that because there's no bringing that back. There's no turning that ash back into paper and those words being back on there. And you know, you can even take it a step further by, you know, when you write something down, you know, whatever, you know, let's put hate. That's a pretty strong emotion. Okay. You put hate on a piece of paper. All right. And you can crumple it up and you're like, I am letting this go. And you let it go and you either set it on fire or you already have a fire going and you watch that piece of paper burn up. Or you can unfold it again and look at how crumpled that piece of paper is. And like Linkin Park once said, a crumpled up piece of paper can't be perfect again. And realize like how this has impacted your life. And you can even set a corn on fire and watch the paper disintegrate and watch that word burn away. And that is a great way of, I've used that to release a lot of negative junk in my life. Or like things that I'm worried about or concerned about. You know, even I've written like my future, my finances, all that stuff. And I've just watched it burn away. So, very practical ways to handle negative things that have happened in our life. And I think once we implement that and actually start letting things go, the flip side of that is forgiveness. Maybe it's not things that have happened to you. Maybe it's things that you have done. And that's holding you back. So you hold on to that because it's like, I've done these things and I didn't think I would ever be capable of doing this. And now I'm just a terrible person. And so you sink into this hole of depression and negativity and whatnot. And it's a slippery slope. And then you end up getting stuck and you're wondering, how in the world did I get here? And it all comes back to take control of your mindset. Those thoughts come in saying, oh, you're a failure. You're this, you did that. You're bad. You screwed this up. And just calling yourself whatever derogatory terms you call yourself. Just, you got to let that go. And then you have to realize that you are forgiven and you have to forgive yourself. If you're unable to do that, you're going to be there forever. And I just want to share some of the stuff that Jamie talks about regarding that. And I think this has some very practical application for us. You know, again, I'm sharing, I'm not trying to force anything on you. I'm just sharing from personal experience what I've been reading and what I personally believe in, and I'm trying to ascertain. So in this, Jamie's talking about trying to discover your true identity. And he goes through the book and talks about praying and, you know, asking God basically for a sense of direction on which way to go. And like, I don't want to get sidetracked on this particular subject, but you know, he mentions, like, if you didn't hear anything, he's like, the first thing you hear, write it down. First thing you hear, write it down. And he talks about, well, what if you didn't hear anything? What if I didn't hear anything from God? And he says, I promised you earlier, this is on page 134, and I don't know what chapter. Make the big ask. Let's pray and ask God about your true identity. So, he's like, I promised you earlier that we'd explore the question, what if I didn't hear anything? There are typically two reasons why people don't hear or sense anything at all during the prayer exercises. One reason is forgiveness. If there's any place in your life where you are unable or unwilling to receive God's forgiveness, how can he talk to you about anything else? God desires first and foremost that you know, live, and experience his absolute grace and forgiveness. Forgiveness is the oxygen you breathe in the kingdom of God. Scripture teaches the following. This is how much God loved the world. He gave his son, his one and only son. And this is why, so that no one need be destroyed. By believing in him, anyone can have a whole and lasting life. God didn't go to all the trouble of sending his son merely to point an accusing finger, telling the world how bad it was. He came to help and to put the world right again. And that is from John 3:16 and 17, the Message translation. He says, if you do not live within God's forgiveness, most likely the Lord will want to speak to this issue first in your life. And he talked about, like I said, and this is where I get it from, forgiveness is like a coin. It has two sides. The first side is about you. Ask the Lord, is there any place in my life where I believe I am unable to experience your forgiveness? Let the Holy Spirit reveal this area to you and then lead you through a process of release and restoration. The flip side of the coin is about others, the refusal to forgive another person. If you come to the Lord and want to talk to him about, but you refuse to release another person in forgiveness, he's not going to talk to you about anything else except releasing that person or persons in forgiveness. We think he's silent, but we just aren't listening to the foundational piece that opens up the flow of communication. Unforgiveness is like a kink in a hose that blocks movement. Time and again, Scripture warns us about the absolute necessity of forgiving others. Jesus even said, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Is there someone with whom you are angry and unforgiving? if there is, your unforgiveness keeps you connected to that other person in a form of spiritual bondage. So, you have to be willing to accept that for yourself. If you hold on to that and are unwilling to release yourself from your past mistakes, your sins, whatever you want to call it, past failures, whether you believe in a God or not, and it's still true that once you say you don't believe in God, well, you still have to accept the things that you've done, realize that they might have been wrong or a mistake or bad or whatever the case may be, and move on from it. Forgive yourself and change that perspective of like, I am not a failure. I have failed, but that does not make me a failure. I have made bad decisions, but that doesn't make you a bad person. It's shifting that mindset and like rethinking of who you are and rebuilding yourself. And that first step is forgiving yourself, or accepting forgiveness of yourself for what you've done. And then the other side of that is, and just like he says, unforgiveness is like a kink in a hose that blocks movement. And if you want to move forward or move into a better position, you have to forgive. And it all starts with letting things go and forgiving yourself, and then moving on to forgiving others that you hold on to for whatever reason. And he talks about victims of any kind of abuse. Forgiveness is critical. And he talked about, where he was an officer, they trained them so that when they're dealing with victims, they can help the victims release the abuser in forgiveness. And it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse for the abuser, who deserves the full legal consequences of their unlawfulness. But in order for the victim to move into a place of healing and restoration as quickly as possible. And that's very difficult to do when somebody has done something to you, and forgiving them. It's, a lot of people that have things done where they become a victim of crime will almost stay in that identity, and it's hard for them to move past it, but it's critical for them. So he goes on, issues of forgiveness and unforgiveness are a first significant block to hearing God. He says the second reason people don't hear or sense God speaking during the prayer exercises has to do with anger. If you're mad at somebody, your anger has to be resolved before you can receive anything from the Lord. You can't hear God through anger. It's attached to unforgiveness. Anger and unforgiveness are the two big blocks to hearing God. And he goes on to say, if I'm praying with a person, they respond nothing, I can't hear or sense anything, then I encourage them to relax and ask, is there any place in your life where you feel unforgiven by God? Is there any place in your life where you refuse to forgive another person? Are you angry with someone? When the issue is revealed, we take it to Jesus. The Lord wants to free the person of these issues. Once they're free of these, they can seek God on other issues. And I would say I've experienced this. He goes on, listening to God produces internal peace that results in external peace. Paying attention, being aware, and receiving the enunciations of divine love and truth resolve conflict in your inner world and then overflow to the people of the world. You can't give away what you don't have. Let's agree to stop reacting in fear, guilt, and shame, and begin exchanging our reality for God's truth so that we can effortlessly and fearlessly give away the peace that we receive. And just like I was saying earlier, it's like, he talks about, I was saying some people might think it's selfish to try to better yourself. And it's not in the aspect of like, I'm better than you. It's in that aspect of like, I want to make sure I'm okay. Because if I'm not okay, then how do you expect me to make sure you're okay? And that's critical. A common example is an airplane. When the airplane's going down, the masks drop and they tell you to put yours on first and then help others with theirs. Because if for whatever reason you can't breathe, how do you expect that you're going to be able to help other people? You're going to run out of air and pass out and potentially die. So that's the next step. We talked about, the first episode was the mindset and heart. And when we're in here and it's negative and bad or whatever the case may be, you have the choice to control your thoughts. It's just practicing on that. When a thought comes into your head, stop and ask, like, where did that come from? And then once you're on that path of trying to transform your mind or transforming your mind, you have to start gathering whatever these things that have gone on in your life, and whatever way you go about letting them go, let them go. You will feel a weight lifted off your shoulders, and you will start to experience that inner peace that Jamie was talking about in here. And once you start figuring that out and forgiving yourself for whatever, it's gonna turn outward, and you're gonna impact the people around you, and it will be for the better. And I think that's what we need to kind of focus on, is let's face ourselves and face the things that have maybe impacted us in a negative way. Release them. Forgive ourselves, forgive others, and move forward for the betterment of everyone. It's a win-win. So why not do it? And, probably like, Michael, what about you? I mean, I'm in the middle of this myself. And I'm not going to, reveal details of my personal life, but I'm in the midst of various transitions, and I'm literally in the midst of practicing these things. And, for the past, since the 5th of March, I've been just writing things down. And I'm noticing the change. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I know I won't be perfect at this. I'm going to have mistakes in life, and I'll trip up and do whatever. But that's not who I am, and I'm not going to focus on that. I personally believe that we were created in God's image, and both male and female, and it's a beautiful thing. God said that was good. So I believe that I am a good man. I am an amazing man, and I want to live in that, not in the other labels that I've given myself, and what because that's not who I am. That's not. So smile, continue to smile. It helps. It does. And if you really want to wake up your senses in the morning, take a cold shower, an ice bath, or you can start off with an ice cold bowl of water and place your face in it. It'll really get the face waking up and your senses alert. Smile. Go out there and smile. It's beautiful. Why be mad? Why be angry and upset? There's no need for that. So thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm learning. I don't know really what I'm doing. I'm kind of just talking and putting it out there and seeing what happens. So I appreciate you taking your time to listen in and implement these things. Try it out. See what happens. I guarantee you things will definitely change for you. All right. Well, that's it for today's show. Again, I don't know when I'll do another one. I'm just feeling this out for now. So thank you, you guys and gals. Have a wonderful day. And hopefully it's a lot warmer where you are.